G'day guys, welcome back to the off-season. This is our second instalment of Bring Back One Legend from your club. We're going to go through 4 teams today: the Canterbury Bulldogs, the Manly Seagulls, the St George Illawarra Dragons, and the Brisbane Broncos. A few days ago, we went through the bottom 4 teams. We went through those ones, brought back our legends that we want for 2023. Go and have a watch of that one if you haven't already. But joining me at the bar once again, he's getting a little bit too comfortable up here, part of the furniture. Matty, the water boy, welcome back, mate.
What's going on, Guru? I'm loving it up here.
I know you are, yeah.
It's fun. It's great.
Mate, these 4 teams, respectfully, a little bit more interesting than the last 4, I think.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, when we did the research for the last one, it didn't take that long. And I didn't kind of think anything of that. It was just like, there was a couple of obvious candidates in all of these, whether they've been, poor for a certain amount of time or whether they've had like a complete standout, like kind of both situations. But these 4 teams, the Dogs, the Manly, the Dragons, the Broncos, they're all like such rich history with like, so many absolute incredible players. This is a lot harder.
Heaps harder.
Yeah.
Now, before we do kick off with the Dragons, obviously when we did the West Tigers the other day, we spoke about guys from Balmain and from the Western Suburbs Magpies. For the Dragons, we've put a line in the sand that you can't go, before 1998, I think it was, or 99, when the St George Illawarra Dragons came in, simply because I'll fucking give it away if I'm picking Immortals from the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, my dad didn't even watch these guys, so how am I supposed to pick him?
Yeah, so we're just going to focus on the St George Illawarra Dragons. Still a pretty rich history, obviously making 2 grand finals, and obviously not the most competitive side at the moment, but throughout that time, they've had some cracking players, some cracking teams. So plenty to get stuck into there. We're going to kick off with the Canterbury Bulldogs. Now, the Bulldogs have obviously made a couple of big signings this year. You got Reid Marnie arriving, William Kickout, etc. You've got your Matty Burtons, these sort of stars that are already at the club. Mate, the forward pack is pretty stacked. For me, I do think that if Canterbury are going to win a comp over the next few years, I think they probably either need to sign an elite fullback or an elite halfback.
Yeah.
I think one of the two. I think whichever one they sign, I think they can genuinely contend with either having Averillo at fullback or Flano at 7. But I think they need to fill one of those spots. So that's the sort of direction I'm looking in. What are you looking at here?
After a long thought process, I'm in a similar boat, but the first kind of players I thought of were forwards. First person that sprung to mind was James Graham. Then I thought a bit further back, I thought maybe Steve Price, Roy Zatasi. But then I really, took a look at this team and I thought they could do, as you said, with a hectic fullback. And you can put Averillo somewhere else. Like, that doesn't mean Averillo gets cut. You can put Averillo somewhere else. Obviously, when I think Bulldogs fullbacks, the first person I actually thought of was Luke Patton. But I'm going to have to go with Benny Barber.
Yeah.
Look, I think we mentioned it on a pod recently. Apologies, I'm a bit sick. A bit recently, like how freakish Benny Barber was. I think 2011 he might have scored as many tries or more than 2012, and 2012 was his Dally M year. 2010 we spoke about this as well, when he just come on the field off the bench and he scored a couple of tries against the Roosters. You do the X Factor. I think you said you were...
Yeah, that was the name of our touch team for a couple of years.
That's dribbly. I love that.
Yeah. It was right up there. No one got it, but it was right up there. It was great.
Yeah, look, that 2012 year for Benny Barber was an absolute highlights reel. I'm sure you've all watched it, but do yourself a favour and just do it again. Yeah. Look, obviously I was a South, I always have been South, and there was a lot of Bulldogs fans in my school when I was in year 12. That was when I graduated. So I didn't really get to appreciate Benny Barber as much as I would have liked, because I was definitely in Team Greg Inglis. That seemed to be the school-wide argument at the time, Inglis or Barber. I wish I kind of sat back and appreciated Benny Barber a little bit more, but now that I've gotten a little bit older, you can really sit back and appreciate what he did for the Bulldogs. And if you bring that 2011, 2012 form back and you slot him in this team, fuck me, they're a premiership threat.
It's a game changer, isn't it?
100%.
And obviously the other fullback you mentioned there was the great Luke Patton. And, if I had to describe these two, compare them, Luke Patton was always an 8 out of 10 here. Ben Barber could go to an 11 out of 10.
Yeah.
He just had that slightly higher ceiling. And I mean...
And also, Luke Patton played for what? He's in the top 10 games played for the Doggies. Benny Barber's not, but he's in the top 5 or 6 for try scores. You know, he scored like 72 tries for the Bulldogs.
Doesn't actually shock me.
Like, that actually did shock me. I didn't think he was there for long enough to score that many tries, especially at fullback.
But he stacked them up. Yeah. He was incredible, Ben Barber. And obviously, when you are talking about, you know, his career at the Canterbury Bulldogs, that was, you know, his absolute apex. He was great at Cronulla as well, there's no doubt about it. But 2011, 2012, very, very hard to top. Just getting up those stats of how many tries he did score at the Bulldogs. 97 games, 72 tries. Now, keep in mind, he spent the first half of the season coming off the bench.
That's what I mean.
Like, it's pretty incredible. I mean, I'm looking at his first 19 games. He started 3 times, 4 times, twice at fullback, once at 5'8", once at halfback. Yeah, he actually wasn't the full-time fullback until his 31st game at the Canterbury Bulldogs. He still scored 70 tries.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. It is crazy, yeah.
That's winger ratio, especially back then.
Unbelievable.
I still think, and I will die on this hill, I still think his time at the Sharks was underrated, like criminally underrated.
Yeah.
He was, it's hard to say just as good, but fuck, he was close.
Yeah, he was, and he wasn't the star of the show.
No.
He also just fit into the team, but he was fucking tremendous. And Matt, I agree with you. I think Barber, if I was going to bring back a fullback, which is one of the 2 positions I would, Barber would have been my pick. The other one is you've obviously got Flano at halfback, who, you know, another hill that I'm more than happy to die on. I think you can be successful with Flano.
Yeah,
Do I think he's a superstar?
100%.
No. But you can be successful with Flano when you've got a Reid, Marnie, a Burton, and if you had a star fullback.
And if they, which it seems like they're doing, if they just give him the preseason and stick with him, which didn't happen last year.
Yeah, and I don't understand why I feel like he's just an easy scapegoat, Flano.
Yeah,
I do. I feel like Canterbury fans just go after him because, I mean, how many halfbacks would not be given a preseason, have their coach change mid-season, have a new 5'8" arrive, you know, at the start of the season, have a halfback playing hooker realistically, Jeremy Marshall-King, and do what he did. You know, he was missing Luke Thompson, his best forward. Like, yeah, I think if by the end of next season, Flano still hasn't, you know, delivered and really stepped up, fine, I'll hear the arguments, but I think it's ridiculous at the moment.
Yeah, totally agree.
But I would still, if I was going to replace 2 positions, it would be fullback and halfback. So you've gone with fullback. I'll go with halfback. And, you know, obviously a lot of guys that pop up here. The 2 big ones, though, Brent Shifty Sherwin, champion player. We've spoken about him a lot in the off-season. Isn't he a classic guy that we would talk about? Just sort of underappreciated, underrated, never played a rap footy, but an absolute fucking weapon.
I loved like you and Jacko went pretty deep.
Yeah.
I
knew he'd be the sort of guy that Jackson would appreciate.
Yeah.
100%. Great kicking game, just fantastic footballer, Shifty. I mean, if you get the nickname Shifty in the NRL, you got to be good at what you do.
Yeah.
The other one, obviously, Steve Mortimer. We're going back pretty far here, but one of the great 7s of all time. Mate, another one I'll chuck in there, and, you know, we haven't really set down the rules for this podcast and how we're going to do it and whatnot, but another guy that did play at Canterbury, back end of his career wasn't his best, but Ricky Stewart, he finished his career there as well.
Oh, true.
There's another one, if you wanted to take peak Ricky, conversation becomes very interesting. But one of those guys, I'd probably go with Brent Sherwin, I think. Without a doubt, a little bit of bias there because I watched his whole career and absolutely loved him. But yeah, I think if you're going to replace any Bulldog, I think it would be the 7 or the 1. You mentioned off the top, so many great forwards. Your Willie Masons, SBWs, these sort of guys. So many guys you could bring back into this side, but I think they've got a good enough forward pack to get by if they have a superstar at 1 or 7.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny, like I've watched a few highlights of Steve Mortimer, and there's that great footage of him playing for the Blues where he just drops to his knees and
the best.
It's just it's hectic. But again, like and I saw a comment like someone was whinging that we only pick players from the last 20 years. Well, I've only been watching footy since 2002. It's very hard for me to fucking pick someone who played in the 80s. But growing up watching Brent Sherwin, I loved the Doggies as a kid because South was so bad. So they were kind of like the team that you love to play with on Rugby League Live and all that shit. Yeah. It was a pleasure to watch Brent Sherwin. Another, like, I'm very happy to call him one of the most underrated players ever.
Without a doubt. I was reading that comment the other day and I got to something about the 1963 Dragons and just went, I'm done.
Yeah. That's why I think that's why I thought let's just fuck off there.
Yeah, tap me out. I'm done. Canterbury. Funnily enough, actually, Blue Wealth Property, who are going to be sponsoring Beers and Break-Evens again this year, went and had a meeting with them the other day. Tony's right-hand man is Steve Mortimer's young bloke.
Oh, really?
Small world. Yeah. Big Canterbury man, obviously, Tony. So, shocked me. He went and picked him up from the Dogs. Mate, let's move to the Manly Seagulls. And very, very interesting. I've got so many fucking names written down here. It's not even funny. And I look at the Manly side, and we spoke about it on Bloke the other day, that they're obviously losing a lot of guys. I think they can replace most of them except for probably Dylan Walker coming off the bench. But I'm not sure if I'm going to bring back someone from all time if they're going to be a 14 realistically. I've got a heap of names written down here, mate. I'm very interested to see which direction you go.
Yeah.
Which of mine you rule out, or you might add someone new to the fucking list. I've got no idea. Which avenue are you heading down?
I am going to completely contradict what I said about 3 minutes ago.
Good.
About picking someone that I didn't really watch. But I did have a bunch of names, but there's only one name I'm kind of gravitating towards. And see, we were talking about this before, and we don't reveal who we've got. But we were talking about like the balance of each team.
Yeah.
Like with the Bulldogs, it's pretty obvious. Like you can put a fullback there because you can move Averillo because there's like that. There's a hole there. But like, whilst Manly aren't, without Turbo especially, like crazy. Like they're not Penrith, for example.
Yep.
They're still pretty well balanced.
They are.
Like it's not like there's like holes anywhere, as you just said. So this one was pretty hard, and I thought, okay. The one that like leaps out to me is 5'8", only because Schuster hasn't played there yet. But like Schuster, who knows what Schuster can do? He can do anything. So I'm gonna go with the 5'8". I didn't want to go with Foran because like we haven't even seen Manly play without him yet. I mean, we have, but like we haven't because he just left. So I'm just gonna put in Cliff Lyons.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna move Schuster to the back row, obviously. So, I mean, if you pick Steve Menzies, that'd be great. But
mate, the first two names on my list were Cliff Lyons and Beaver.
Yeah.
But as you said, if you do pick Cliff Lyons at 6, it solves another problem where you can move Schuster to the edge.
And that's what I was kind of thinking because I was thinking about guys like Beaver, Gifty.
Yep.
Thought about Chocky Watmo.
Yep.
All these fucking greats and I watched obviously all of them. Didn't watch Cliff Lyons, but have heard enough about him and have seen enough highlights, plenty of highlights. And in fact, he's still playing.
Yeah,
he's playing. Wizard. What's he playing? Touch or something?
He's playing. I played him in All-State a couple of years ago.
Really?
Moving incredibly slowly, but just fucking with everyone. Unbelievable to watch. Just an absolute wizard.
So yeah, I think that it's a pretty safe choice because he's a legend. He's played 300 games for him. Obviously, was a gun. And as he said, it solves another problem. You put Schuster back in the back row and suddenly they're a lot better. Yeah.
Now, I had Cliff Lyons, Beaver, Gifty. Jeff Tuvey was one that stood out for me. Could play him, obviously, at 9. Yeah. I think that Croker does a very good job. But given the opportunity to put a Jeff Tuvey in there with a little bit more upside.
It's funny you say that. So I did say they're pretty well balanced everywhere. I guess, like this time last year, especially now that Fainu is gone, it just shows how well Croker played that I kind of forgot that, like he's a half really.
Yep. He is a half.
He's a half. Yes. So I was wrong. There actually is a spot, but like he did so well that there's not.
There's a spot to be improved, but I don't think there's a problem there.
Great way of putting it.
Like if Turbo was to play his best footy next year and Manly win a comp, it would surprise me, but I wouldn't be blown over. Their spine just does what they're meant to do. And I think that with a guy like Croker, he reminds me a lot of Matt Ballon. Matt Ballon's a better footballer, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't much attacking upside. You can just rely on him in defence, and he just keeps a steady head the entire time. So, I mean, Jeff Tuvey's one you could bring back. Hate to say it, but we obviously saw Turbo get injured the other day as well, once again. Hopefully, by the time you guys listen to this, we've got the results of the scans, but Brett Stewart, he's one you could consider. And I do wonder, mate, if you bring back Brett Stewart, do you maybe move Turbo into the centres and just give him a bit of a roaming role?
It's weird. Like, I'd love to actually speak to NRL physio and like ask him all these questions because
tough day at the office for him yesterday.
Oh, I'm sure it would have been.
He was on holidays, I think up at Byron, he said, and he got absolutely fucking pounded.
Really? I'm not surprised. But like, I don't know anything about hamstrings, but it said that he got
injured. You should read a comment section. Everyone knows everything about him, apparently.
But the reporters, whoever was there, said that he did it while he was slowing down.
Yeah.
So I just don't know how it works.
Yeah, which I'm exactly the same. I've got no idea how it works, but
so then
that worried me more.
But that's what I mean. Like, how does putting him at centre solve that?
Yeah.
Is it like if it's not, you know, because I read a few years ago that he actually needed to run like 10 40-meter sprints going like 90% or something to like strengthen it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I spoke to Roger Fabry a few weeks ago about it. Just happened to run in and we were talking about it. And he was sort of saying how I think he said that he would get him to do more high intensity stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, there's obviously and you know, for me sitting there going, fuck, you want him to go 100% more? Isn't that going to give him more chance of injuring it? But he sort of, and don't quote me at all, please, but he sort of said something along the lines of, but once you get him used to going at that pace, it can change everything. So,
right, okay.
But yeah, we're talking so far out of our asses here.
Oh, I got no idea.
It's not.
I'd love to know.
Fucking clueless. Yeah. So Snake, he's one I would consider for that reason. Mate, the other outside back that I would seriously consider, and we've spoken about him quite a bit. I fucking love this guy, Jamie Lyon.
Oh yeah.
You could play him at 6. You could play him at centre. He's just a fantastic footballer. And if you were to put him on that right edge, you could go DCE, Olakuatu, Jamie Lyon, maybe move Kohler to the wing or move him to left centre. You know, could solve another problem there. But
imagine a team, I just randomly thought of this. Imagine a team that like had, you know, a set of halves, whatever. Then you had like Glenn Stewart as one back rower. Then you had like Jamie Lyon as the centre. And then on the other side, you had like Wade Graham as a back rower. And then
a team of like your best ball players in each position, sort of. Yeah, it'd be hectic.
It'd probably be counterproductive.
Yeah,
but it'd be
without
sick.
a doubt it would. Yeah, I think so. But it'd be fucking mad to watch. That should be our next topic.
Definitely.
Mitch, write that down. Okay. The player I would go for, though, and I think that they've lost Marty to Powell. They are a little bit light in the front row. Spud Carroll came to mind for me, which I think would be a great pick, but I'm going to pick a different player and one of the greatest forwards we've ever seen. And he arrived at Manly a couple of years ago and completely changed their attitude, turned it around, turned everything on its head. And I think that when you have a look at the way that Manly finished last season, they had a bit of controversy within the club and it all sort of fell to shit. I don't think it happens if Ben Kennedy's in the third team.
True.
So my play would be to bring Ben Kennedy, play him at 13, and probably play Jake Trbojevic in the front row.
Yeah, makes sense.
But BK, I remember talking to Michael Witt, and he just happened to be there at the time.
Yeah.
And he said that Ben Kennedy arrived, and he just took Gifty and Watmo under his wing, and just showed them everything and just changed the attitude of the club completely. The standards just took them to another level, and Ben Kennedy never won a premiership at Manly. But as soon as he arrived, he turned it around in 2 years. He retired, and then they went on that glory run.
Oh,
of grand finals, premierships.
Yeah, that Manly team's one of the best we've seen.
And when you go back and you have a look, I think Manly started in 1947, so I think they picked their team of 70, 60 years or something. He only played 2 seasons, and Ben Kennedy got a spot in the team.
Really?
So, yeah, says a lot about it. And the last 2 years of his career. It's not like it was peak Ben Kennedy. He just arrived and said, we're not going to fuck around anymore. This is how we're going to do it. So I think BK, he'd probably be, I think, Cliffy Lyons, very, very hard to leave out for me, but you and him, so I think I'll bring in Ben Kennedy into this side.
I didn't expect that, but that's good. They're fucked it. Man, they've had some players, man.
And mate, I am so confident there's other guns that we've forgotten.
Oh, yeah.
People leave in the comments, 100%.
I think it's crazy as well. And, like, obviously this gets spoken about a lot, but I hope Manly win a comp in the next few years because, like, how crazy is it? They had the Stewart brothers and then they just had the Trbojevic brothers.
Yeah.
And they're both a fullback and a...
It's unbelievable.
It's fucked.
Yeah.
And, like...
And I think there's still one more Trbojevic to really put his mark on this system too. Just crazy. And mate, knowing the Manly Seagulls, when you have a look through the history of the club, they tend to win a comp every 7 or 8 years. It's been a while now.
It's been
2011.
Yeah, 11 years.
They lost in 13, obviously.
Yeah.
But controversially.
Oh, they shouldn't have even made the grand final. Souths were up 14 in the prelim.
Love that. All right. Put your seatbelt on, Matty.
This is
George Illawarra Dragons.
This is
tough.
Yeah.
This is brutal. Obviously, the Dragons, neither of us are overly high on the Dragons heading into next season. I'm probably a little bit higher on them because you've got them for the spoon.
Yes.
But I'm not that far.
Well, I've got them for the spoon. Like, I haven't like done my spoon, but like I've got them as they're paying like $9 for the spoon, best value for the spoon. But I do think, but like that's what I meant. But like I do think they're a fucking good chance at it.
Yeah, I think they'll be a bottom 4 side.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
But as we said the other day, the Dragons, they're just like a cockroach. They just fucking hang in there, don't they? They don't die. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the heading into next season. And there's a lot of spots in this team that you could try and fill. And mate, if I was to pick mine, as crazy as it sounds, the one position I'm confident with the Dragons is halfback. I'm bringing back a halfback. I'm bringing back Jamie Soward, and I'm playing Ben Hunt at 9.
Wow.
And I understand how fucking ridiculous that is because he's the one guy I know will do a job. But I just think you got your best player there, Ben Hunt. I want him to play his best position, which is hooker. And I think Soward could come back. And I still think Jamie could walk into rugby league today and have the best kicking game. He was a fucking freak, Sowie. Won a comp with the team, goal kicker, can do it all. I would happily have Soward at 7, partner him up with one of these young blokes, and then have Ben Hunt at 9. And I think it can sort of change the way that you play.
Yeah, you've stumped me. I was going to go Soward. It's funny. It's hard. It's so hard because you can put. You're right. Like Ben Hunt's their best player.
Yep.
But it seems like Soward is the best option to come back because, man, what he could do was just.
The other one I would consider is Trent Barrett. Another one that I think people forget how good Trent Barrett was.
Yeah, that's true.
He's another one I'd be more than happy to bring back. Fullback's another spot. There's a bit of a question mark around there. Obviously, they've got a Clive Churchill medalist and Darius Boyd.
Darius, yeah. The other one I was thinking was Dean Young.
Yep.
You can play him at hooker, but you can also play him in the forwards.
9's a problem, isn't it?
Nine's an issue because, if Little gets COVID, like not even injured, if he misses a week, who's the hooker?
Who's the hooker? You're looking at Bud Sullivan again. So it's, they're in a pretty grim spot there. You've obviously got Dean Young you could bring back. You've got Nathan Brown, Nathan Fiend.
Yeah.
There are a couple of options there.
You know, I'm going to go
the great Mick Ennis.
I'm going to go Dean Young.
Dean Young.
Because then I'm happy to back Little in to start at 9, but and then Young would walk into the team anyway, and then if needed, you can put him a hooker if Little goes down or if Little needs a break or whatever. I'm going Dean Young. I think they need someone like that.
I actually wouldn't be surprised if Dean Young actually ends up back there next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he replaces Hook.
Have you noticed how similar he looks to Todd Payton?
It's terrifying.
Sometimes in the box, I'm like, seen double.
Yeah, very similar. Thank fuck I grew my hair back too because my mates used to be in the same fucking category. So, I think Dean Young's a good shout. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that could potentially be the next coach of the Dragons. Obviously, he's up at the Cowboys doing really good things. Dragons have already let us know that their coach is under pressure before a ball is kicked.
Yeah.
As far as the Dragons go, mate, though, like obviously they've had other great players during the last, 20, 23 years, whatever it's been. But I think the two that stand out for me as a kid were Gasnier and Cooper, but Sully and Lomax.
Yeah, they got 2 gun centers.
Don't get me wrong, Cooper and Gaz are better players.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's their biggest problem.
It's probably their second biggest strength, to be honest.
Probably, yeah. That's probably
In fact,
fair.
definitely.
The only other one that I would have considered, mate, was bringing back like a Luke Bailey in the front row.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been nice. Yeah. Even like a Mick Wayman as well. Could be another one to bring in.
For a small moment, I thought about someone like Beamos or Nightingale, but I think their problems start a bit more infield than their wingers.
Yeah.
I think their priorities, lay elsewhere.
Jeremy Smith's the other one I would have considered.
Oh, that's true.
I love Jeremy Smith.
He's just,
Jeremy Smith, your Bo Scott, your Ben Craze, these sort of guys. Plenty of options.
If you bring him back, Fuck, that was an underrated combo. Soward and Bo Scott.
Bodyguard.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner. He was a freak, Bo Scott. He was a good player.
I love when he gave it to GI in Origin. Yeah. It was the best.
Unreal. All right. We leave the Dragons there.
Tough, but...
Tough gig.
Yeah, Soward probably would have been my first choice, but I'm happy with Dean Young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brisbane Broncos. Another very interesting one. Obviously, some of the greatest players of all time have played there in the last 30 or 40 years. I look at the Broncos as it stands right now. They've got the halfback. So that rules out Alf for me.
Yeah.
One of the greatest sevens we've ever seen. I don't need him back in. You could bring him back to play 5'8", but I think there's other options there that are better. Darren Lockyer.
Yeah.
One of the greatest players we've ever seen. Could play 6, could play 1. The world's best 5'8" or fullback, depending on what year you're looking at. He's a guy that you could bring back to play 5'8" or fullback. You play him at 5'8". You could leave Reece Walsh at fullback, or you could play him at fullback and maybe move Reece Walsh to 5'8", Ezra Mam, 14. So many options, and then so many big forwards to choose from that are just to instill that old DNA that the Broncos have always had.
Yep.
What direction are you looking in?
I was hoping you'd go first, but...
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. I am going to go for... You've obviously got Adam Reynolds at halfback, Reece Walsh at fullback, Ezra Mam at 6. I'm still sort of deciding between two spots. There's two guys one of two guys I would bring back, and I think you'll actually go with a different option. I've got a feeling, but we'll see. Darren Lockyer, I think he's the obvious one.
Yeah.
I think he'd be fantastic to bring back. If I did bring back Lockie, I would probably play him at 5'8", and I'd probably turn Ezra Mam into a 14. But if you're going to do that, you don't have the hooker that can play 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's where a problem arises, obviously. And I don't know if I'd want Ezra jumping into hooker, but I just think having Lockyer in the side would be unbelievable. But then there is the argument that this is Adam Reynolds' team.
Yeah.
They don't need someone else. They don't need another chief to come in to own this side, realistically. So my other option, mate, Gordon Tallis. Just to bring him into the back row, and as we said, that old Broncos DNA, he has just got a fuck you attitude. He understands the Broncos through and through, and I don't think, if Gordon Tallis was in this squad, I don't think they would have missed the 8 in the last 2 or 3 years. I really don't, because they've always had the talent, but it was the attitude and everything that completely fell apart. You put Tallis back in there, and I'm kind of slowly convincing myself that Tallis might be my guy, to be honest with you.
Yeah, right.
Who are you going for?
Well, that's interesting because I was hoping you'd go first to eliminate one of my 3, and he wasn't one of my 3.
He wasn't one of them.
I mean, no, it's a very fair shout.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love Tallis back in. I just for some reason didn't think of like a back rower. So I'm gonna go Lockyer. It's too.
Yeah.
It's just he's gonna be an immortal. It's too hard. You can't leave him out. I'd put him at 6. I'd keep Reece Walsh. Yeah, I definitely would have Lockyer at 6 and keep Reece Walsh at fullback.
At fullback, yeah. So does Ezra Mam miss your side then, or?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't want him to because he's so good. And you're right. Like then one of the hookers have to play for 80. It's a really good point.
And we can't decide which of the 4 hookers will play for 40. So deciding which one plays 80 is a tough fucking gig.
Man, it's tough. But I just can't not bring back Lockyer. Like I have to bring him back. So maybe Ezra Mam will miss out, unfortunately.
Tough.
Which is fucked because Ezra is. Man, I'm so keen to watch him this year. It's so good, and thankfully, this is just purely hypothetical. He's going to be a star. Ezra Mam, I can't wait to watch him play. And I reckon if we had this conversation in 6 months, 12 months, my probably answer would be maybe a little different. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'd bring back Berrigan. Who knows?
That's going to be my next question. Sean Berrigan. He's obviously a Clive Churchill medalist in the Brisbane Broncos. Was a centre, halfback, hooker, 5'8". Incredible player, Sean Berrigan. We've spoken about him a lot on the off-season, but he's a guy that would be perfect coming into this team, wouldn't he?
He'd be fantastic. Like, that's what they need. They need, that number 9. But I think as well, if you asked me 12 months ago, if you asked me a year ago this question, I reckon I would have gone Petro because they're...
Petro over Shane?
Oh, flip a coin.
Yeah.
Because... Yeah, actually, I don't really know which one. I reckon if you ask 100 people, you have 50 on one side, 50 on the other. Yeah. Because they had such a young forward pack, and they were like crying out for a leader, especially in the forwards. Sorry. Now, obviously, like Paddy Carrigan's turning into a bit of a leader. Like Payne's got another year, so maybe they don't need him as much. I'd still think right now he'd be fantastic for them.
Yeah,
because they're still a young pack.
Sure.
So yeah, Petro or Shane Webke would be fantastic as well.
Now, before we go, I want to put you in the coach's box with your hypothetical of Adam Reynolds playing halfback, Darren Lockyer at 6, Reece Walsh at 1.
Yep.
Round 1, Reece Walsh does an ACL. Touchwood doesn't happen.
Yep.
Does Lockie go to fullback?
Yeah.
And Ezra, yeah.
Definitely.
Then you make the change?
Then I'll make the change, yeah.
Okay.
It's only because you got Walsh, who's a fucking superstar.
Yeah.
Rising superstar, already superstar, whatever you want to call him. Already there at 1. Ezra Mims, he's only played half a year, so I'm giving it to Reece Walsh based off that.
Well handled, Coach. Very well handled there. Nicely done. Guys, thank you for joining us once again on the off-season. Our next episode, we'll be going through the next 4 sides, which are the bottom 4 sides of the top 8. So I think we're talking Canberra, South Sydney, Roosters, Melbourne. That's going to be a fucking cracker. Really looking forward to that one. Plenty of options there. So stay tuned for that one. And we're going to have more best 17s coming your way this week as well. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, guys, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff for us. Appreciate you always. Talk to you soon.